You're the guy people call when they need a helping hand, moving furniture, unloading a truck. But lately, your shoulder's been acting up, and you're the one who's calling for help. And that's the moment you realize you can no longer shoulder the load.
The Joint and Spine Center is Cincinnati's leading destination for orthopedic care with a range of surgical and non-surgical treatments. So when a moment has the power to change the rest of your life, go to the one place with the power to change it for the better, the Christ Hospital Health Network. This changes everything.
The Pound This podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This podcast, episode 590, a new chapter.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This podcast with Amanda Valentine.
What's up, friends? Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This podcast. I am Amanda Valentine, and this episode might get all over the place because this is kind of almost like a diary episode. I'm talking about a new chapter for me. So I don't really have a roadmap. I'm just kind of puke out what's on my brain a little bit. So if this is your first episode listening to, you may love it or hate it. I have no idea what to tell you what to expect. But I do want to sit down and talk about a new chapter that I'm going through, which if you follow me on Instagram, I talked this week about a new meal prep menu I was going through, and that has a part in it. So there's things that I'm going to touch on in this conversation that I definitely am going to do a deeper dive into in the next couple weeks. And that is that, well, to backtrack a little bit, I started the beginning of this year starting therapy, which I probably should have been in for a long time, but I never did. I attempted therapy once while I was still working in radio, and my schedule was so weird. The only time I could go was before I went in to go on the air, and I'd be so stirred up and flipped upside down. I was just a total wreck, and it just would not work. So one of the goals for me, if you're new here, I've worked in radio for over 20 years. It's all I ever wanted to do is my dream job, and I quit. I did not renew a contract. I chose to walk away at the end of 2019, which is this big, huge life shift decision for me pre-COVID of, I've been living this healthy lifestyle and been on a weight loss journey, at least as successful in turning my health around since the beginning of 2012. So I've been obese most of my life, yo-yo dieted for a really long time, and then finally found a way that worked for me. And so through all of this and beginning this podcast, I was just like, this is what I want to work in. This, like, I'm helping other people, and I just, love everything about it. I've been doing this for at the time, like 8 years at this point. Like, obviously this is not a fad. Let's go. Like, let's, you never know if you don't jump, and I'm going to hate myself if I don't try. And working in radio, I had no time. So part of that of kind of having my own schedule was this is going to be the year of really kind of working on me a little bit of like, let's really dig into some stuff and like, let's see what I can do, or my schedule and my brain's a little bit more open for things, and starting therapy was one of those, because I'm not going to get into details. I'm not prepared to do that yet, but I've had a very abusive, traumatic past, and there's a lot of stuff I've never dealt with, and I know that it affects my behavior, and I know that, and I try to unwind it myself. There's the things that I haven't unlocked or really decided to look at for a really long time until recently. So I knew I was opening a Pandora's box this year and kind of really getting into some messy stuff to hopefully for growth. And so that was part of the plan pre-pandemic. And it has been, and it's been going absolutely great, because it is a whole heap of growth. So from that, making a huge dramatic life change as far as career goes, and I've never been an entrepreneur. I couldn't have a side hustle before. Everything I did, I had to do for the radio station. I was contractually obligated to do stuff for the radio station, including this podcast at the time. I didn't own this podcast. This wasn't my technical podcast. And so, it's just a whole new world. I've never done anything like that before. I mean, I started hustling and working at radio stations as soon as I got a car when I was 16. So like it's mostly what I've known, other than working at like gas stations and waitressing and Subway and stuff like that. So I feel like once COVID hit, I was feeling awesome. I was still feeling good of like, this is an opportunity to help. At the beginning of COVID, everybody was like, let's band together. Let's help small business owners. Let's help healthcare workers, feeling good. And then like the rest of us, man, that just getting the summer of just kind of like all of these big changes, digging stuff up for me. And then here comes this pandemic, and just a depression I've never felt before. So my therapist has clinically diagnosed me as depressed and having anxiety, and has recommended to me to try antidepressants because, which I want to get into a whole full episode just about depression, just because, I feel like I've had depressive episodes. And again, I talked about, I've been through some things and I feel like I've had, tendencies of some depression, but like this year, man, it's nothing I've ever experienced. And it's purely awful, where it feels like I'm going to start crying. Like the color has been drained out of life, and everything that I've loved, it just feels like numb. Like I just don't feel it anymore. Like it's just gray. And oh my God, am I having a hard time? And, some days I can really get it together and I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling so good. I feel normal. I'm Amanda again. And then just out of nowhere, it's just like everything, the color just drains and it's just gray again. And I'm like, just punching my arm, like, wake up, stop this. And it's just terrible. And I know that, and then I think, well, so many people have so many worse things, and, suck it up, buttercup. Your life isn't bad. Everything is great. Like, I mean, on paper for me, everything is going really well. And at the same time, it's just like this, it's just like a monster in your brain. And my therapist made the point of, you can't fix this. Your whole life, it's been like, I'm in a bad situation. I'm going to get myself out. And she's like, you can't pull yourself up out of your bootstraps on this one. I can't, this is something going on in my brain that I have been at war with for months, of just like, basically when you don't want to work out, shut up and run. You know what I mean? And I'm locked, and it's killing me. But anyway, so it's like, that's a whole discussion I want to get into later and talk to mental health experts, because from me kind of opening up about this to personal friends and acquaintances and stuff like that, almost every single one of them, I was like, oh yeah, well, I'm on medication. I'm like, for real? Or yes, I'm like, I'm in therapy. Yes, I have depressive episodes. I'm on and off medicine. And not only that, of so many people I'm talking to, just this pandemic and this year, no matter how it has affected you, whether you've gotten sick or if you lost a loved one or if you lost a job, or if nothing and everything is just going great. And it's still just the temperature of the world. And I have not talked to one person that, well, when they honestly have a conversation with you, is feeling awesome. And even talking to my therapist, I was like, so I'm like, is this common this year? Like, she recommended me to go on antidepressants. Because I don't know, I don't even really take like ibuprofen or anything. Like, I'm like, is this something I want to do? And she's just like, listen, everybody is having issues right now. And I'm like, I hope this doesn't make me a crap person. That makes me feel better. Like, not that I wish pain on anybody, but to be like, oh God, it's not just me that can handle this, because I feel like I'm supposed to be strong and pick it up and hold it, right? And it's like, I don't understand. Sorry, my dog's freaking out. That, it's frustrating. And so I wanted to talk about that on this podcast. So hopefully if you're going through something like that, you don't feel alone, because usually for me, it's happy, fun, silly Amanda. Amanda's going to say something inappropriate. And, Amanda has all this energy. Like some of my best friends are just like, oh my God, you're the Energizer Bunny. Like, do you ever stop? And to tell my best friend, Colleen, I was talking to her a couple weeks ago and I'm like, I don't even want to go for a walk. And I'm like, I want to, and I just like can't make myself do it. She's like, oh my God, she's known me for 16 years. She was on the phone with me for a million walks. Like we'd talk on the phone and I'd be out for a walk because it's like one of my favorite things to do. I've lost most of my weight going for walks and all this other stuff. And she's like, you're scaring me. Like she's like, you need to just take care of yourself right now. And through all of that, I feel like I just want to like elevate my mood. I just want to feel better. I want to feel like me. And I'm really digging back to the way that I have known how to do that in the past, which is eat. Because if you've listened to this podcast, you know that I've really battled with binge eating disorder. And I will say I have to sit back and be proud of myself that I haven't gone into binges this year, which is that's years of work. And I am proud of myself for that. But I have been way more relaxed than I have been for years. And I'm just making different food choices. And at night, I'm just in this swirl in my head and I just like want to feel better. So I'm just eating to feel better. I'm still eating all my meal prep food during the day. And during the day, it feels like I got it. And then at night, I don't have it anymore. And I mean, I'm not binging. I'm just not taking care of myself the way that I have for years. And God, I hate it. And it just doesn't feel like me. And then I just feel so stupid that, I'm starting this whole career of caring about health and wellness because it is such a huge part of my life. And I feel like I can't hold it together by myself. And again, first world problems, right? But it's just been battle. Also throw in there that I got sciatica starting in January and I couldn't move until August. And now I'm slowly creeping back to exercise. So I would try going for walks at the beginning of COVID, or I got my spin bike and doing Peloton classes. And then I would feel fine doing the bike riding. And then my sciatica would hurt so bad I couldn't fall asleep at night. And I don't really like taking pills, like I just mentioned. And I'd have to take Z-Quil in order to fall asleep because I was in so much pain. So it's just been a brutal year. Everybody has their own version of why this year's been so terrible. And then it's just so frustrating for me to hop on social media or whatever, and everybody is just seemingly has it together. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm even more garbage. Like these other people are just crushing it. And why am I struggling so hard? This is supposed to be the time I'm killing it. So with that all being said, it's just, there's so many ways that I have been growing this year and it has been really positive. Through all of this, I've really made it a point to meditate every day. That's something that I've wanted to do for years, and gratitude journal, and I try so hard and it just doesn't. And you hear people talking about meditation all the time. Like, I just can't sit in quiet. I cannot either. And I'm not there yet. But for me, I'm like, I got to do something to just sort through my own head. Like, it's just crazy. So I am talking to a therapist, and that helps a lot. And so doing this meditation, I'm like, well, why can't I just do these guided meditations on YouTube or whatever? And to me, it feels like, oh, well, that's cheating. You know, like, especially when you do a weight loss journey or you're doing something, you're like, you see something as like some sort of workaround or shortcut, and you just like dump on yourself. Like, you can't do it the right way or whatever. Like, it's just, I don't know. Maybe that's just my twisted brain. But I'm like, well, so what if it's the training wheels that gets me going? Again, it's that like all or nothing mentality, which I struggle with a lot. And it's where you know better and then just putting those things into place. So I am proud of myself for getting myself into a routine of meditation, and that has helped a lot. And so I was just having this episode where I was just feeling so down. And I just wrote all of these things of like, why are you acting like everything fell apart? Here's all these really good things that you're doing for yourself. And I'm having it here in front of me. I have like half a huge legal pad of things that I'm like, I'm acting like things are so bad, but I'm like, but I am growing. And I think that that's true. So for so many of us this year is growth is really hard and yucky. And you hear that term and you think it's supposed to be sparkly and shiny. Of like, no, it just sucks while you're going through it, but it feels awesome on the other side, which none of us, we're all just like, when's the other side coming? All right, 2020, I've had enough of this. So I've been leaning into different things that I didn't do before. And getting to my point, like I told you guys, this is going to be all over the place, is a huge realization that I have had that I really wanted to share on this podcast is that I just really need to lean in to asking for help. And I say that on this podcast all the time of ask for help. Don't be shy to ask for help. And I won't take my own damn advice half the time. And the reason I started this podcast, which if you've listened to multiple episodes, you've probably heard me say this, is I wanted it to be a resource on a journey because I felt like when I started this weight loss journey, the one that I'm on currently, like in the beginning of 2012, I felt like I was alone. I was really alone and nobody else was doing it with me. At the time, I had a friend that was starting the weight loss journey with me. And after a month, she bailed and I just kept going. And then ultimately she ended our friendship. That's a whole nother podcast too. But of ending friendships over lifestyle changes. So I was just like, the resources that are online and influencers and all that crap, like weren't around in 2012. And I started this podcast because I was like, it sucks to do this alone. And I want to create resources for people. I want people to feel like they're not alone. I want to share my own journey. If it resonates with anybody, and just like I do, but doctors and trainers and other weight loss journeys and people that have done great things to, to direct you in the right direction. And that's why I started this podcast 3 years ago. And because if you need help, like here's resources for help. And here I am thinking, oh, I can fix this all on my own. Like here I am again. I have not struggled like this in a very, very long time. And this time it's just different. Like where I was before I started this weight loss journey, I was massively binge eating and secret eating. And I was in a way bad place in a different way. And here I am again, really struggling in a bad place. And I'm like, oh my God, Amanda, but like, just ask for freaking help. Like you created a podcast to give people help, like lean into help. So, which my therapist I hired, I found from a connection on this podcast, Dr. Ashley Solomon, who's been on this podcast multiple times. I highly recommend listening to her episodes. I met my therapist through her because she gave me a recommendation of like, here is my damage. I need help. Do you have someone to recommend other than me just like Googling and find somebody? Like, that's what I hope this podcast helps people with. It's like, you don't have to just randomly shoot in the dark. Listen to somebody's story and maybe it resonates and that makes it easier for you to find the person that can help you. So that's how I found my therapist. And now like that, I'm just struggling with really a war with myself with going to go back to this comfort eating. I'm not comfortable in my body right now. I am not happy with where my body is. I haven't been able to exercise I went all year, which is also my stress relief. I've been not eating in the best ways, which I've just because I'm eating the best that I can for what I'm working with. But I don't know. It's just a struggle. And it feels like I'm just like can't get a connection. It feels like I have the plug and the outlet and I just keep hitting the wall for some reason. And I'm like, I know how to do this. what the hell, girl? And then I beat myself up when I should be like, it's fine. Like, it's, it's not you. It's not like I have less value because I can't figure this time out on my own in a really hard year with really hard circumstances for a lot of people. It's okay if you can't freaking figure it out. And I will say that to anybody, and I absolutely believe it. And if somebody gained 100 pounds this year, I'd be like, oh, you did what you need to do, and give them a hug. You know what I mean? Like, why couldn't I hug myself and say that? Because it's like, oh, well, you want to comfort eat carbs at night. Like, oh, it's so crazy. It's how you treat yourself. And I treat myself like garbage. I am the meanest person to myself, and I've been trying to work on it, and it's getting better, but damn, I am the worst to me. And now that I'm my own boss, 0 out of 10. World's worst boss to myself. Damn, does she have high expectations. And so I'm leaning into getting a health coach because I'm coaching people and I love helping other people. And it's like, again, I can help other people all day long. And I have energy for that. But when it comes to me and taking care of me, it's like, shut up, bitch, get it together. So it's just wild how that works. And it's like, I see myself doing it and I can't change it. And I'm like, it's just, I don't know. My brain is in some funky ass place right now. And I'm glad that my therapist has put a clinical diagnosis on it. So I just don't feel like, oh, I'm nuts. It's like, there's a reason behind it. And so, just for my own sake, I'm not shaming anybody or anything about mental health. I'm just sharing my own story here. So please don't come at me for something I'm sure I'm saying wrong. So I talked to Sarah DFit with me. She was just on my podcast a couple weeks ago. And one of the reasons I asked her on the podcast again, one, her coaching business is absolutely amazing. She helped me build the back end of my coaching business earlier this year. And just the amazing story that we've had where she hired Jason Theobald, and it was like month 2 of me having this podcast, and he was a guest. And the particular episode was dieting for your body type. And she hired him as her coach. And he got her where she wanted to be. And, she's in such a good place now. She is a coach for many, many women. She's excellent at what she does. She's just killing it. And she's lived it. She's, and she's now like, she's got Jason as her coach and she's coaching women. And I'm like, I have to be into that space where I'm like, lean in and ask for help. Ask for somebody to help carry the load. Like somebody that I can just like, just lay my head on their shoulder and just be like, help me, please. Cause I don't do that. I'm really bad at that. And so, when we recorded that episode, not when we were recording, I asked her of like, I need help right now. And will you help me? And she said, yeah. So, Sarah is my coach right now. And, she does things a little bit differently than I do. She's very specific with macros, which I've never been a huge macro person just because I hate math. Math sucks. I've done calories and I've done all these other things. And that's where I was at this war with myself of like, oh my God, Amanda, you know how to eat, you know how to figure this out. Like what do you don't need help. And I'm like, but that's stupid. Like coaches have coaches and therapists have therapists and it's okay to have help. Like, again, I just tell people to get help because I know it's important, but I won't allow it for myself. If that sounds familiar for you, I'm sure you're probably like, yeah, that me, right? It's just insane how you do that to yourself. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm going to lean into it. I've leaned into therapy and asking for help and really letting out some like deep-seated things that I'm afraid to put out there, and working through that is super beneficial. And working with Sarah, so this is at the time you're listening to this, this is week 1. And so she at first will create your meals for you, and then you start figuring them out on your own. So which I also found just like, very refreshing. I don't have to come up with a menu this week. That rolls. Again, it just feels like, just like a weight off of my shoulders to that somebody's helping me, of just somebody that you can vent to, which is with the coaching clients that I have of like, I want to be, you're having a rough day. You're in the bathroom crying and you're just like so stressed out. Reach out to me. I want to be that person for you. You know what I mean? Like that you are having that day where you're coming home from work and you want to binge eat. Call me, you know, like that I want to be that person for other people, to have somebody like that for me right now, because it's like, I need this right now. And it's scary. You know, it's scary for me to lean in and ask for those people to help me. But now that I'm doing it, it feels like the load has been lightened so much. So I'm glad I'm practicing what I'm preaching. I'm just asking for some help, of just somebody to lean on, of just like, things are hard. And I will say that, you know, I have been, even if something you've been doing for years and it somehow isn't connecting right now anymore, like it's just reach out and lean on somebody, whether that is a coach or a therapist or a friend. And I will say that that is an absolute place of privilege for me right now to be able to work with these people, because I haven't always been able to afford it. I've also been way too afraid to do these things before, but that to know that it's an investment in myself, and I just hate that mental health has a price tag on it. Like, it's just, I hate that, you know, we can't afford to have a therapist, and that sucks. And that's been almost all of my life. I grew up eating legit government cheese and food from church pantries. Of like, to think of hiring a therapist, I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm not like, you know, I'm not like rich living in New York City. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just this stigma of that is what I grew up with, of like, that's unattainable. Like, that's not real. And just how deeply important it is. And a realization that I came to also of realizing for me, 2020 is a year of growth and asking for help, which is kind of my new chapter of leaning into some of these things, is that it came to the realization, like I said earlier, that I created this podcast for people that felt like they were alone and needed resources and needed somebody they could ask questions to, or hear an expert that they could ask questions to. And I'm like, here I am 3 years into this podcast, and I used this podcast as my resource because I can't do it alone right now. At this moment where I'm at with my mental health, like I need help. I need it. And to be like, I used my own podcast. Like, everybody I'm asking for help, I met through my own podcast. I'm like, it was my own resource. And I'm like, oh, that just blows my mind. And for me to also, because of like, you know, battling with self-confidence of like, is what I'm doing good enough? And does it really help people? And be like, oh, well, you know what? Not only am I the founder, I'm also a client. I'm like, oh my God, but it's helping me of like, oh, and then I was like, oh my God, what if I just created this podcast just to be like the resource for me in the future? Like, I'm, you know, creating the help I need 3 years from now. Isn't that weird to think about it? Like some sort of time traveling thing. I know that's kind of woo-woo-y, but like, but to be like, yeah, this is what my intentions were of this podcast, and to see it in action, which I have. And thank you so much to so many people over the years that have written me and tell me that, you know, that you've hired somebody because you've heard on this podcast and how much they've helped you, or you've lost weight, or you reached out and got mental health through somebody. Like, it's just, it's so amazing to me. And so shout out to everybody who's ever messaged me. And I save all of those messages just because I just think it's awesome to see that what I'm putting out into the world helps people. And for me to be like, but it's helping me too. I don't know. It's just, it's awesome. Like, it's awesome. That, all the people that I'm leaning on right now, I met through this podcast. My therapist, from Gallia Collaborative, I'll put all the links in of the show notes of Sarah D Fit With Me. If you're looking for a health coach, Sarah is just awesome. And, so I'm just crazy weird circle that she met a coach from my podcast. She became a coach, and now she's my coach at the moment. It's just, I mean, you can't write that. You know what I mean? Like, that's absolutely amazing. So check out her. Also, Shelly, that I've been doing Pilates with because my body has been so jacked this year, and I've been so frustrated of not being able to move my body, and I feel like I've lost all progress that I made. And, Shelly listens to this podcast, and, that I've met Shelly because of this podcast, and now I'm doing Pilates with her, and it's been helping me a ton, not only just to get back into the gym, back to a place where I feel confident, knowing that I'm not hurting myself. So Pilates is absolutely amazing. And so thank you to Shelly. I've been leaning on her, and also Josh at Cincy 360 Fitness, who is one of my good friends. And I met him because of this podcast. And, I'm about to start training with Josh again because I trained with Josh for a year and a half. Up until like COVID, or not until COVID, until I hurt myself this year whenever he couldn't work with me, and he was scared to have me lift and do stuff with my sciatica as bad as it was, because he's like, I don't want to hurt you more. So I haven't worked out with Josh since probably February. So now that I've been confident enough working with Shelly, doing Pilates, I'm going to just start doing some light lifting again and doing strength training with Josh. And Josh has been awesome. And we had big plans this year, didn't we all? Like, I have a podcast studio at the gym, and we were going to do a YouTube channel. We had all these plans of all this cool stuff and events and all this stuff we were going to do this year. And then, COVID shut everything down like everything else. And it's just kind of like, now you just dump out all the pieces and you're trying to put them back together. And that's where I feel like this is a new chapter for me. I feel like this year's been messy, like it's been for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. I'm pretty sure I had COVID, even though I tested negative, that even doctors have told me, they're like, yeah, it sounds like you had it. It's just these tests aren't reliable, which isn't that fun. That's a whole nother discussion. But of like that, and being in pain all year physically and mentally, and just I've worked in such a collaborative environment my whole life, and to just being at home all the time, like I'm just sitting here in my little home studio, that, I miss people like so many of us, of like just the ways that you didn't think this year was just going to scramble with your brain, of like the things that you took for granted, and the things that you're just, you'd think that it would be just easy to deal with, and you just don't. So again, if you're struggling this year, oh my God, it's totally fine. Stop beating yourself up, as I say that to myself. So I feel like pieces for me are starting to come together a little bit more, because I am leaning into that. I've found so many people that I can kind of trust fall into. I have a lot of really deep trust issues, which I'm working on in therapy, because of a lot of stuff that's happened to me. And so for me to lean into these amazing people I've met because of this one little podcast, and to know that these people really care about me, and I really care about them, and I would do anything to help them. I would absolutely do anything to help these people. And to know that they feel that way about me, and now that I'm having a rough patch, when I typically always feel like the person that has my shit together and I run hard and I'm a hustler, and man, I will just from sun up to sundown, I am going. And to the fact that I just feel just so halted and that I can lean into people to help me is a huge new chapter for my life, because this is something I've not really given into. I always feel I'm going to get hurt. It's a trap. When I let somebody in or ask for help, it's going to show vulnerability. It's going to backfire on me. I'm just going to get hurt. Just figure it out yourself. Just figure it out yourself, because that way you can't get hurt. Then it's all your fault. If it doesn't work out, then you have no one to blame but you. It's on your shoulders. And to kind of ease up on that, I think is really big. So it doesn't matter about the weight loss or the eating or the exercise or that. And I know that you're listening to a health and fitness and wellness and weight loss podcast, and that encompasses everything. And for me, the big shining light for this year has been mental health, and how incredibly important that is, where I feel like my physical health has had to take a back seat a little bit for all of the above reasons I was talking about, but just also because mental health has just kind of taken the wheel of trying to get through everything that's going on in my personal life and just in the world in general. Like that takes a lot of power. And then, I mean, that's driving the car for so many of us. So it's like, if you don't have the brain space available to worry about what the number on the damn scale says, that's okay. But again, what you're eating is fuel for your body, and it does affect your mood, and it does affect your mental health. And I know that. And so that's why I think it all fits together. It's one big puzzle. It's not just weight loss. You know what I mean? It's everything. Everything comes together. And I hope that I'm making sense. And if you're still here, my goodness, what a little peek into my brain. But I hope this is helpful in some way. Moral of the story is ask for help, lean into it. You know, it's going to be all right. At least that's where I feel like I am. And because of everything this year, I have gained some weight, and I've been choosing to be mad at myself about that instead of being like, that's fine. That's fine. Like, again, I'm so hard on myself, and I'm sure you are too. And so I'm like, well, I realize what I've been doing, and let's get help and let's get healthy. Let's get to a healthier place physically and mentally. And so that's where I just kind of feel like this feels like a new chapter for me. It just feels different. It feels different, and I'm excited that I have a team of people on my side. And if you're feeling like I wish I had that, well, you absolutely do. Like, I'm right here. And if you feel like you're bugging me by sending me an email, you're incorrect. Like, if you need people, there's people on this podcast that are on here because they want to be a resource for people, including myself. And these people have their people in their life that are their resources, because I'm just waking up to it now, the importance of having the people that you can lean on. And for me, I a lot of people have a very strong family and support system, and I don't. And I never have. And I'm proud of myself for how fiercely independent I am. But there is a cost that comes to that too, is I am just used to it being me. And even though I have my husband and we've been together 16 years, I still have always had a guard up of like, if this ends, I'm fine. You know what I mean? Of like, if I got a roll or he's got a roll or he bounces, I'm fine. Like I am me. I could take care of myself. I got, it's just all me. And, I've moved to several different states alone before I met my husband, and I'm like, do it again. Even though it was nice once I had somebody to go with me and have the ride for me. It's just, I don't know, that's just deeply ingrained in me. So to the other people like me, just where it's hard to lean into a support system, it makes a difference. So I'm moving forward of, exercise is looking different for me now, of where I'm at with Pilates and going back into the gym is going to be different than the way I exercised before 2020. The way I'm approaching food now is different than I have done before. And my relationship with food has gotten weird this year. And again, it's not because of me and my stamina or my willpower or my motivation. It's been a jacked year that has mentally hijacked a lot of us. And it's not like, get out of this cycle of just kind of like, oh, well, you're just stupid. You know what I mean? Like, which is how I've always felt. Like, well, just you're so dumb. Like, you just got to figure it out. Of like, sometime again, asking for the help. Whatever. I'm repeating myself. So, I'm excited. I'm excited for the future of everything, and I feel like me doing all this is going to just make everything I do better. You know what I mean? It's going to make this podcast better. It's going to make what I post on social media better. It's going to make me a better coach. It's going to make me a better friend. And it's not going to happen overnight. Again, it almost feels like I'm starting a new journey and sharing that version of this on this podcast rather than this is what I've done. This is what I do to continue to maintain. Here is where I am. This is just, a different kind of beginning. Again, it's not a fresh start or anything like that or a new beginning. It's like I said, it's a new chapter because it's all a journey, right? Like there's not ever a journey that doesn't have rough patches. It's not like skyrocket to the moon always. And every day is summiting a mountain peak. There are some valleys in there, you know what I mean? And so that's just part of my journey. And I've been doing this podcast long enough now that we've seen some peaks, and now I'm in a valley and we're going on a climb again. So to me, that's exciting. That's really exciting to really share what a journey really looks like in real time through this podcast. And there's times that I've kind of backed off recording some podcasts too, because I'm like, I don't feel very motivational for people right now. I don't feel like I'm very happy right now. And I don't want to put something out there that is fake or me forcing anything. I choose to put out nothing versus slapping a coat of paint on a turd. I mean, that's rough, but you know what I mean? Of just kind of like, so I feel like doing this and sharing some of the uglier parts of the journey it's what's helpful to me. It's what's really helpful to me. I don't know if I've shared this story before on this podcast, and it really has nothing to do with health and fitness, I guess, other than the point I'm trying to make is I went to a podcast conference pre-COVID when it was actually in person. So this was either I think it was last year. It's 2019, maybe 2018. I went 2 years in a row to Podcast Movement. And the most helpful session, because, if you've ever been to a conference, they can be incredibly boring. But I nerd out over this stuff. So I really loved it. And, one of the sessions I thought was the most helpful out of every session I went to, and I went to a bunch. I didn't just go to like dink around like a lot of people do at conferences. Also, if you go for work, because I went for work, it was someone from NPR, someone from TED Talks, and I can't remember who the other person was. And they shared in part of their PowerPoint their biggest failures. And I thought that was so helpful. Like NPR was like, oh, you think that we're NPR? And I mean, they have This American Life. They have like a lot of the top podcasts. And so does TED Talk. But specifically the NPR woman was talking about how like, yeah, but we've tried this. This is how we've tried to promote new podcasts. This is how we've tried to launch stuff, and it just failed. It just didn't work. So then we tried this, and then we tried this. And like, I'm like, oh my God, that is so helpful to me. I don't know if that's helpful to other people, but it's like sharing the struggles, but also just being like, yeah, well, you know what? It was a dead end. So we turned around and we tried this, and that was a dead end. So we turned around and tried this. Cause how many that just fits into all of us in our lives, but you just hear the wins afterwards of like, oh, well, yeah, we have this American Life and it has millions of downloads every week. Aren't we awesome? Everybody emulates Ira Glass now. The end. And so they could have done that, but they didn't. They just think that they're vulnerable and be like, this is where we suck. And this is what we learn from sucking. And not to say that I suck right now, but to say that things, it's, hitting roadblocks and things aren't just, firing on all cylinders every day. And that's part of the journey. And this is where I'm going to learn the most. I think that if you're having one of those years, that probably you're going to walk away from this year from learning so much about ourselves and the people around us and where we want to be and how we operate. I think it's going to be the most helpful for us and the people around us. But man, when you're in the middle of it, it blows. It sucks. Like, it's not fun. Like I've had some days where I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. Oh, will the sun ever come back out? And, but I'm learning from where I've been in that, and I'm continuing that path. So I'm excited for what kind of lessons that will teach me and how I can implement them into the things that I do. So ultimately, it's really good. Ultimately, even right now, I'm again so glad it's letting me lean into asking for help. It's letting me lean into sharing this part of myself on this podcast right now. This is just going to exist on the internet for anybody to listen to, right? And so it's like, it's exciting. And I think it's going to work out really good ultimately for all of us on very different timelines and in very different ways. Again, we all have our own struggles and we all have our own different versions of wins. But I know I've cried in this episode and it's been all over the place, but I think that it's good. Like it's really good. And we have a lot to look forward to, and to take these hard times and be like, this is going to ultimately work out in my favor somehow. I can't see it now. I am one of those believers of everything happens for a reason. I tend to been leaning way into more spiritual things this year too, of just like everything means something for some reason, and we're all learning some sort of lessons from everything going on. And it's just a very big teaching year and growth. Again, you see that word growth thrown around so much, and what nobody talks about is that it blows. And it's hard and messy, but it's worth it. So anywho, I'm going to stop rambling. Again, for the people that I mentioned in this episode, I'm going to put all of their links in the show notes. And, there are almost 600 episodes of this podcast now, lots of interviews, lots of people that are all really great people and really great resources. And I've had them on this podcast because I personally believe that, and I don't want to steer anybody into a way of that they're, that they're going to find somebody that doesn't have their best interest at heart. So hopefully that's helpful to you. If you ever want to reach out to me, my email is amanda@AmandaValentineBites.com. And I will definitely get back to you, unless it goes to my spam folder for some reason. Then it might be a while until I find you, but it shouldn't do that. So thank you again so much for listening to this podcast. And I know I've ended so many podcasts this way, but it's extremely meaningful to me, especially if you're sitting through episodes like this and and then you're really like listening to me and not just me interviewing somebody, especially when I'm talking about hard things for myself. I really appreciate it. And I hope that I can return the favor and listen to you if you need, or whatever, what I'm talking about. I don't know what I mean. AmandaValentineBites.com. Subscribe, download this podcast, share with your friends. Talk to you later, homies.